Professionalism, Civility, and Respect. Today, sponsored by our partners over at Monterey County Works. My name is Anna. I'm the digital media and event strategist here at the California Employers Association. And again, we just want to thank you for joining us live today. So before we do get into today's training, just a couple details to go over with you. So as you see, your audio is muted for today's presentation, but as you're already doing so in the chat so beautifully, there are going to be lots of opportunities and invitations to engage during today's training. If you do have questions about the content, you can put those into the chat box or the Q&A box at any time, and we will do our best to address them as we go. I'll be here the whole time supporting Eli, so I'll make sure that your questions get answered. Handouts for this training will be dropped into the chat box shortly. So once you do see that PDF icon and file name pop up, if you click it, it should download locally to your drive. Again, I'll be here the whole time watching. So if you have any issues accessing that PDF, please just ping me in the chat and I'm more than happy to help troubleshoot that with you. As you saw when you logged on, the webinar is being recorded and the team over at Monterey will be reaching out when it's available for your review. And then last but not least, we'll be inviting you to share your feedback at the end of today's training by participating in a brief survey. It's only 5 questions, takes about a minute to complete, but this is your opportunity to make sure that we're meeting and hopefully exceeding your expectations. And this is also where you can suggest topics that you would like to see for upcoming training. So we encourage you to scan the QR code at the end. I will also drop a hyperlink into the chat for your convenience. And again, just take them in at the end to help us out there. So again, today our training is brought to you by our partners over at Monterey County. And today we're so happy to be joined by Laura Kirshner, who is the Business Services Specialist, who's here to share more about the resources available to employers like you, including some upcoming events. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Anna, thank you so much. We so appreciate our partnership with CEA. It's absolutely wonderful. We want to let our businesses know that are joining us today. Thank you so much. And there is a lot of resources available, for you here at Monterey County Works. We've got the opportunity for you to sign up for specialized recruitment events. We have 2 a month for specialized recruitments. We also have 2 multiple employer job fairs this fiscal year. Log on to our website to learn more about our opportunities, MontereyCountyWorks.com. MontereyCountyWorks.com. We've got all kinds of activities to support your business. Everything from hiring videos to workforce minutes. We've also got training opportunities for you. Encourage you to take a peek at our on-the-job training. Learn a little bit more about it on the video on our website, as well as incumbent worker training. These are meant to help your business and to support you in hiring people who are within our workforce employment programs and services. Some other resources are our wonderful human resources hotline, our rapid response opportunities for those who might be going the other way, and maybe downsizing. We can help you with that, and then support during downsizing. And like I said earlier, the employer hiring videos. We do have a opportunity today for businesses still available to you if you want to join us. There's a multiple employer job fair going on today between 1 and 4 p.m. You can log onto our website, MontereyCountyWorks.com, to sign up and join us. It's not too late. We'd love to have you. We'll provide you with a table and a couple chairs, and then you bring your job descriptions, your pop-up banner, branded tablecloth, and your enthusiasm, and we would love to have you join us. Like I said, it's a pretty advantageous schedule for this year. Log on to our website to learn more about our opportunities, our calendar of events this year. It is pretty ambitious, but we think with your support, we can bring you together with our local job seekers. And I got to tell you, there's a lot. So you would be very surprised at we have almost 100 job seekers per multiple employer job fair. So that is something to see. Give me a call here at the office, 831-796-3341 if you need more information. Again, thank you to CEA for this wonderful webinar today. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Laura. We appreciate everything that you and your team do for employers in your county and beyond. So now I'd love to introduce our trainer today. We have Eli Nunez, one of our HR directors, who if you call that HR hotline, maybe you've had the pleasure of working with. So you're in great hands, and I'm going to hand it over to Eli.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Laura. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to remind you, too, for the 2025 webinar series, you see we got today will be the fifth one we have in the books. We have one coming up on September 17th, What Employers Need Today. So make sure you sign up for it. We'd love to see you on that one as well. And also want to remind you of the Monterey County Works/CEA Joint HR hotline that we have available for any employers in Monterey County. If you have any questions related to human resources, give us a call. We will answer your call in person, usually Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, excluding holidays, of course. But, we will get back to you as soon as possible, usually within an hour if we don't get you live at that time. So I want to help you with any HR related question you have. Some of you, I recognize the names on there, may have called, may have talked to me or one of my colleagues before. So we always love to hear from you, whether it's a question or just a situation you want to talk through. You want another set of eyes or ears to go through it. We are here to help. And once again, want to remind you of Laura Kirshner's contact information there. Please, reach out. Sounds like Monterey County Works has a full schedule this year, so make sure you're taking advantage of that. Give her a call, drop her an email, and if you have a chance, drop by that job fair today. We know, summer season, we're right in the middle of it. Things are busy, so an extra set of hands never, never hurts. A little bit more about us. We are California Employers Association, and our goal really is to provide you with peace of mind, whether you're a member or a caller on the hotline. We strive to give you any guidance or answer your questions as they relate to human resources. We know human resources is very complicated, especially in the Golden State. So let us help you out with that. Maybe ease that burden a little bit so you can focus on everything else that it takes to run a business. Things are complicated enough as it is. So any help you can get, I'm sure, is a good thing, and that's what we're here for. With that, though, one thing I would like to say is that we are not lawyers. And even though we do have people on our team that do have legal experience, we do not give legal advice either on our presentations or over the phone or by email. So we always recommend if you have any questions of legal nature, make sure that you are consulting legal counsel. They can better advise you on those situations as well as provide attorney-client privilege, which we cannot do. So again, sometimes when you call, if you have any legal questions, we will say, hey, this is better to be discussed with an attorney and refer you that way. Same thing with this presentation. We will talk about many topics, but this is just for education, not for legal advice. So with that, let's jump right into our topic for today. Basically, we're going to be talking about how do we create a culture of professionalism, civility, and respect in the workplace. So some of the things we'll cover today are what are the barriers to civility and respect in the workplace, because identifying those barriers can help us find ways to overcome them, of course. How do we create that culture of civility, professionalism, and respect? Something that we strive for, and it's not something that you can just do once. You can't just train everybody in the beginning and expect it to be done. It's an ongoing process. There's things we have to do to make sure that we maintain that culture along the way. It's a lot easier for culture to break down and for things to go south than it is for us to maintain it. So we have to constantly work at it to make sure that things go the right way for us. And finally, how do we make work human? It's work is not just about clocking in, clocking out. There's a whole lot of hours in between there where we're interacting with each other, interacting with clients, interacting with vendors. So we have to make the most of those interactions. How do we bring the human aspect into it in order to make things more, again, more civil, more human, more respectful for everybody in the workplace? So, reason a lot of you logged on, I'm sure, is because, we know what happens when we don't have a foundation of respect in the workplace. And maybe it's something that we've experienced personally in the past in some of our past employers or past workplaces, or hopefully not, but it could be something that we're experiencing right now. We have a workplace where we know that there's not respect among colleagues or for colleagues in management, and we know that things just don't seem right. Things are off. And what are some of those effects? Well, some of the things that I identified that happen when we don't have that foundation of respect, of course, is employee morale takes a big dip, right? And usually when employee morale drops, we also lose that employee engagement. It gets to a point where employees just aren't happy to be there, so they don't want to be there. And their minds start to drift away. They start thinking of other things. They're just not engaged on the job. And Of course, when you lose that engagement, you lose the enthusiasm, you lose some of that innovation. And, when an employee doesn't want to be at work, it's going to show. If they don't feel welcome, if they don't feel any kind of attachment, it's going to show both in their actions and their productivity and their output. And that's something that in the long run, causes a lot of harm to our organization. We don't have that respect. You also have a lot more conflict in your workplace, and that could be amongst the employees themselves, or you can have that conflict between employees and management. That looks a lot of different ways, right? It could look when you're trying to roll out a new program as management, and you always get that pushback from employees, again, because you don't have that foundation of respect. So there's always that second guessing. Employees are thinking, well, why are they rolling this out? We don't trust them. You don't have that mutual trust. So it makes things a lot more difficult for you as managers, as owners, to put anything in place because you don't have that trust, you don't have that respect amongst each other. Obviously, too, when you have a dip in morale and engagement, you have employees that are going to leave. If they feel that they don't feel a sense of attachment or a sense of mutual loyalty to that workplace because there's no respect there, they're going to look elsewhere, right? We've all heard the grass is always greener on the other side. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But again, if an employee doesn't feel respected or sees a lot of disrespect amongst peers, it's a lot easier for them to start looking in other places where they do have that feeling of respect or that feeling of attachment or commitment. And again, turnover, a lot of us may think, well, that's just a part of doing business, right? People find new opportunities, people move on, so it's a constant thing. But it gets really difficult when you start losing some of that talent, some of those people that you've invested a lot of time in developing. Basically it feels like you're almost training people for somebody else to take advantage of it. And that's something that doesn't have to happen. If you have a workplace that's welcoming where people want to come to work, you're not going to lose that talent, and your investment in your employees is going to pay off in the long run. Okay. Again, you lose engagement, you lose collaboration and productivity. Employees are just there to check the boxes, more or less, right? Do the bare minimum, keep going. So you lose that collaboration between employees. Employees don't interact with each other, don't want to interact with each other. So that leads to everyone just kind of working in their little silos, just producing, checking their boxes, producing just what they have to move on. Okay. Along, there's some other symptoms, of course. You have absenteeism when employees don't feel that commitment, don't feel that engagement, the feeling to be there. It's a lot easier to call out. Or just, it's a lot easier to feel like you don't want to be there. So you're going to use your sick leave, you're going to use your vacation, or you're just going to call out because you don't want to be there. And as you know, especially if you have a smaller team or if, everyone's got very specialized tasks, one person being gone has a ripple effect over the entire organization. And when you have those ripple effects, of course, your customers are going to feel it. Not only that, it's not even due to absences, but when you have a situation where there's no respect amongst employees or employees in management, where you have that contention always going on there, it's you can feel it in the air. If a customer walks into your place of business and there's a lot of conflict there, employees don't like each other, management and employee are always battling over things, there's going to be that tension in the air that, you know, I'm sure we've all felt it. You walk into a place and people just feel like they're not happy or people just look like they don't want to be there. We always joke around about the DMV and how miserable it feels to walk into the DMV, right? Could be the same thing in our place of business. If we have a workplace where there's not respect and people just don't like each other, aren't being civil to each other, our customers are going to feel that. They're going to acknowledge that and they're going to go somewhere else. And what's that lead to? Well, of course, leads to, you know, our organization, our brand being damaged. And finally, of course, legal risks. If you have disrespectful conduct between employees, that puts you at risk of any claims for things like bullying, harassment, possibly other things like that that your organization can be in trouble for. So when we talk about what does this cost our company? Well, a lot of times these are things that we can measure. This is what we call tangible costs. Our productivity drops, It's going to show in the numbers. Same thing with mistakes or any kind of rework. We can quantify that. We could put a cost to that. Absenteeism, tardiness, that sort of thing. These are all things we can track. But then you have your intangible costs. And the question is, do the tangible costs lead to the intangible? Intangible lead to the tangible? You have a chicken and egg type situation, right? Which one of these lead to the other? Where you have your, is a lower morale the cause for tardiness, or is a tardiness the cause for lower morale? End of the day, it doesn't matter which one of these causes the other. These are costs that we see in businesses that ultimately affect the organization as a whole. And I'm talking about things, even if it's not things you measure, if it's just like a workplace that's full of gossip or drama, or, morale is very low, that's going to lead to other issues that could ultimately damage your brand, damage your business, or maybe even sink your business at the end of the day. So my question for you, if you want to put a comment there in your chat box and, do it anonymously, you could do it about your current job or a past job, but how often do you witness or have you witnessed or experienced a lack of respect in the workplace? Never, rarely, occasionally, frequently, or all the time. And Anna just threw a poll up there for us. Thank you very much. This is even better because it's really anonymous. So we kind of see what it looks like out there, right? So looks like what we have out there is occasionally seems to be the prevailing answer here. Someone said frequently, frequently. Sorry to hear that. And someone said rarely, which is great. That's what we're striving for, right? Yep. I mean, looks like occasionally is our top answer here, and it is something that happens, right? I mean, whenever you have people, whenever you have humans, we can't take the behavioral factor out of things. So we are going to see some of these situations arise from time to time. That's why it's important to know about them, acknowledge them, and deal with them, right? We have to deal with these situations as they come up as soon as possible to make sure that they don't become anything bigger. Because what happens if we don't deal with these situations, especially when they first start, they can have a big effect on our workplace. And one thing we always like to point out is, when you become aware of an issue or suspect that there may be something going on, it's important to address it as soon as possible. Reason for that is, of course, think about an issue when it gets started. Usually, it could be a small issue between one or two people there. Just a handful of people. You can address it early on, deal with the issue, maybe deal with those two or three isolated people that are dealing with it, address it, possibly solve it or come up with some kind of resolution. Problem is, if you don't address that problem early on, what's going to happen? And we've all seen this, happen in our workplace or heard about it happening in other workplaces. We don't deal with a situation, or we kind of half deal with it, half don't, kind of try to sweep it under the rug. Our employees, our team becomes aware of that. And what happens when they become aware of that, of course, they start losing that respect or that faith in us as managers or as someone that's in charge of this sort of thing, someone that's in charge of the culture of the organization. And that could possibly lead to the work environment just kind of degrading to a point where we have what's called a toxic work environment. Now, we've all heard the phrase from time to time, this place is toxic, this person is toxic. We've all heard the Britney Spears song Toxic. I mean, we've heard the word thrown around many times, but when it comes to the workplace, what are some signs that you are in a toxic work environment? Well, we've identified 5 signs that show that the workplace could possibly be toxic. The first one, incivility and respect. That could be amongst coworkers, coworkers in management, clients, vendors, whatever it is. But when you're treating each other without a level of professionalism or respect, that is going to be something that spreads throughout the organization. Rarely does it just stop between two people being, not civil or disrespecting each other. It affects the whole environment. I mean, think about it. When you're in your organization, you see two people that are constantly arguing with each other, yelling at each other. It's not just about them, it affects everybody around them, creates tension, creates doubt, creates maybe people are afraid to speak up or afraid to do anything, or even afraid to interact with those team members. So again, it has those repercussions that kind of affect everybody around them. the work environment becomes very divisive. And, that's what happens when you get maybe little cliques that start forming, where it's not just one or two people arguing or that don't see eye to eye. You start getting allies, you start getting divisiveness, you start getting, you know, different opinions or different teams, if you will, in the workplace, different cliques, and that obviously can fragment an organization and create a lot of problems for you. Again, that's what, where teams break apart, and it makes it so that it's very hard to bring the team back together. Okay. Unethical behavior in the workplace. Again, that's a symptom or a sign that there's no respect either for the organization, for your teammates, or for management at all. You're cutting corners. You're doing things that shouldn't be done, or things that go against policy, or things that go against the law in some cases. Again, if this is something that, one person does, it can easily spread throughout the organization, right? Well, if so and so got away with it, I'm going to do it too. If so and so's clocking in and going out to their car to sleep, they're getting away with it. Why shouldn't I? Right? So that unethical behavior again can poison the atmosphere. It can lead to other people either mimicking it or doing other things because of it. Competition, and specifically cutthroat competition amongst team members. Now, healthy competition is one thing, and that's something that we see used in the workplace many times. We have teams competing against each other. We put up scoreboards, about different teams maybe having a certain number of days without accidents, or a certain number of accuracy or something like that. That's healthy competition, right? We see it a lot in sales too. I mean, and salespeople don't just compete against themselves to try to beat their records, they compete against each other. And that's fine. But when things become cutthroat, where the goal is not to make yourself or your team better, but to do things to damage the other team or damage the other person so that you come out on top, that's where we have those issues, right? So again, healthy competition is one thing, cutthroat competition is something that can absolutely damage an organization. And finally, bullying at work. Again, a sure sign of disrespect or a sure sign that the work environment is not where it should be. You have employees that basically use abusive conduct towards each other. They talk down to people, they insult people, they go out of their way to make other people feel bad just to make themselves feel better. Again, that when you have that in the work environment, rarely does it just stop with one person just bullying one other person. It spreads throughout the organization a couple different ways, right? You could have one person that bullies multiple people, bullies their team, or you can have other people that see that behavior and mimic it because they figure one, it's not going to be punished, or two, that's just the way business is done. So that's why we want to make sure that we're addressing those things because any one of these five things can easily spread throughout the organization and basically poison the entire environment. So we talk about what are some of the barriers to have a respectful work environment. Um, you know, very simple ones and things that we see all the time. Sometimes we see these things as not being very harmful in the work environment, but they can be, gossip or hurtful statements. I always ask the question when I present live, is there gossip in the workplace? And that it's always met with laughter because yeah, there's always gossip in the workplace, right? There's always chit chat, there's always, talking, there's always rumors, that sort of thing. But when we start letting these things take over, we start weaponizing these against other people, that's where you have an issue. That's where you're going to, you're using these things to harm somebody else. That's where you're going to have a problem. Invading somebody's privacy or personal space. Again, as humans, some of us are very open. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Others, we like to have our own little sections, our own little areas, and that's perfectly fine. But it's important to make sure that we know where everybody's boundaries are and that we respect them. And everybody's boundaries are going to be a little different. So it's important to make sure that we become aware of this, we respect it, and when we cross somebody's boundaries, if we do it inadvertently, make sure that we apologize and we come up with a way to resolve the issue. We talk about disrespectful listening too. And I think this is something we may have all witnessed. We the world is very busy right now. Sometimes somebody's talking to us and we're texting on our phone or we're typing or we can't be bothered to look up at the person or give them our full attention. And we may be thinking that we're just multitasking, but at the end of the day, it could be something where that person just feels that, hey, you know what? Why am I even wasting my breath? They're not paying attention, they're not listening, they're not giving me the respect I deserve. I took the time out of my day to go talk to this person, to go communicate this, and they're not even paying attention. So why should I even bother in the future? Fault finders, and this is something where we always have the devil's advocates in our workplace, in our office, right? Someone that likes to point out flaws, if you will. And identifying flaws or identifying issues is one thing, but when you have somebody that just devotes their entire time to shooting things down, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, no matter where it comes from, their whole thing is about shooting something down. And not just that, but pointing out how stupid the idea was or how inadequate it is. That's going to, create a disrespectful work environment as well. And finally, someone that mocks others. And this kind of goes along with bullying, right? Criticizes or mocks people in front of everybody else. If you have a critique or a suggestion of somebody, and I say this to managers, I say this to employees, I say this to everybody. If you have an issue or a critique or a suggestion for somebody, pull them aside and talk to them about it. Don't make a show of it. Don't do it in front of the whole team, especially if it's something that's going to seem like you're mocking them or something that's, really could be really embarrassing for them. Pull them aside, have the conversation, because if your goal truly is to help them improve, you're going to do that in a private manner, in a professional way, rather than in front of the whole team where you're just making a show of it. Okay. So when we talk about how we build that foundation of respect, here's some things that you can do. The first one is, be aware that everybody's different. Respect their individualities, right? We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different points of views, different experiences. So again, be aware of that and know that everybody comes from different areas. Everybody's suggestion might be a little different. Everybody's going to see things a little bit different. So we're going to recognize that and give everybody a little space to do that, right? We're gonna recognize we aren't all exact carbon copies of each other. So it's important to be aware of that. And, not every idea is a winner. We recognize that, but everybody deserves to be heard. Everybody deserves to share something, right? And if you give them that respect, hopefully they're going to have the respect to make sure that they're being productive. Their suggestion is being something that's actually adding to the group. And what this is going to lead to is more collaboration amongst the team. If you have a situation where people feel that, hey, my teammates showed me enough respect to give me the ability to share something, they're going to be more open to collaborating rather than just having a bunch of people sit back and let one person drive the whole process. Because at the end of the day, when we build the team, we're not just bringing in hands or we're bringing in carbon copies of each other. We're bringing in people with different backgrounds and different experiences to add to the team, right? We want the whole to be bigger than the sum of all its parts. We want everybody to contribute and to add more to what we're doing. Um, as managers, of course, or as leaders, we want to make sure that we're being consistent and treating everybody fairly. I always tell managers too, if you're consistent, if you treat everybody the same and you stick to your guidelines, it's going to make your job so much easier because people are going to know what to expect, right? If you establish those expectations early on and you stick to them, you get to a point where people only have to come and ask you things because they already know what's expected of them. So again, it's going to make your job a lot easier. It's going to avoid a lot of issues that come, from being inconsistent, right? If you treat people in different manners, whether for whatever reason, they're not going to trust you. You're going to lose your credibility, obviously, and they're not going to respect you because they're going to think you're playing favorites. So again, consistency, fair treatment is the way to go. And finally, listening and avoiding overreacting. Um, I have kids at home. This is a tough one. Sometimes, people come to us with some a mistake, a suggestion, an idea, or something, and it just sets us off. Well, it's important to learn to take the time to listen critically, analyze things, and think about what we're going to say or how we're going to react. Again, that'll go a long way with your team being open to sharing things with you as opposed to being afraid and hiding things, hiding mistakes, you know, sweeping problems under the rugs because they're afraid of what your reaction is going to be. So we also need to practice what we call small acts of civility. In other words, our small actions that kind of create and improve an environment where people want to share things, where people want to be more respectful. And these are little things. These are things that we maybe learned way back in kindergarten, right? Saying thank you, please, you're welcome. That goes a long way in having a welcoming, respectful environment. We talked about gossip in the past, in the past slide too. Don't speak behind people's backs. Don't say unfriendly things about them. Look, I understand, we're not always going to like all our coworkers or all our employees or all our managers. That is fine. And that's where respecting the position instead of the person comes in handy, right? We're not going to speak unkindly of people. We're not going to talk behind their backs. Again, we're not going to contribute to poisoning the environment there. Greeting people. Just, hey, good morning. How you doing? How's the weekend? That sort of thing. Couple phrases we say to each other in the morning, but it can really set the tone to how the rest of the day is going to go for you guys. Don't belittle others and their efforts. Again, everybody contributes based on their experience, based on their ability, and every contribution is valuable. All right. We talked about disrespectful listening before, texting or reading your phone during conversations. If someone's taken the time to go and communicate something with us, let's, make the time to give them our full attention. Engage with them, look at them, possibly crack a grin or just at least, look at them or in their direction so they know that you are listening to them. Okay. Give them a quick response. This goes for electronic communications too. Respond to emails in a timely manner. It doesn't mean drop everything and type a response right away, but also means don't leave people unread, right? Whether it's by text or email or whatever. Once we get that message, let's respond. And when we're responding, of course, let's be aware of what we're responding. Email is a great tool. It allows to communicate over great distances with great detail, but at the same time, a lot of times, it allows us to fire off our immediate, gut reaction and send it off. And then we stop and look back and read it and we're like, oh my goodness, why did I say that? Why did I come off like such a jerk on this one, right? So recommendation that we've all heard in the past is, if you're going to write an emotional response or an emotional email, type it out, wait, read it, and either delete it or send it at that point. So again, sometimes it's easy, whether it's by text or email or something to send responses that maybe we wouldn't say in person. We wouldn't tell somebody face to face because we're hiding behind that monitor. So again, let's be conscious of that, not be rude in our emails. And if we make a mistake, you know what? We're all human. No one expects us to be perfect all the time. Sometimes we feel that pressure in certain positions that we always have to be right. And if we make a mistake, we have to keep going in that direction because we're already committed to it. Well, you know what? No, we are all humans. If we make a mistake, we admit it, we apologize, we engage with those that were involved in it or harmed by it to see how we can correct it. Now, to this point, we've talked about those relationships between coworkers, but what happens when we don't represent our company in a respectful manner outside the workplace? And some of us deal with, outside vendors, outside clients, that sort of thing. And you know that, we've all experienced or we've all been in that situation where maybe we've gone to a certain place of business and didn't feel like we were important, didn't feel like we were treated well. And what happens in those cases? Well, first thing we do is, we turn our backs and we walk out sometimes, or they don't see another dime from us. That's a favorite of mine, right? If I feel like that I go to a place of business I'm not appreciated, I'll just walk out and they won't see me again. But a lot of times, what do we see nowadays? Well, you got your Yelp reviews, you have your Google reviews, you have all kinds of things where any inconvenience or bad experience is out there for the world to see. So again, it's very important to know we have to get it right. We have to get these interactions with our clients, with our, customers, with our vendors. We have to get them right. And if we make a mistake, we have to work with them to make sure we're solving them, to make sure that it doesn't come back and haunt us down the road. So again, when it comes to being professional in the workplace, Professionalism has to be something that we're working on all the time. And that's, when we're meeting somebody, remember, you have that one chance to make a first impression, right? So that's going to mean, are we giving them our full attention? Are we being respectful to them? How are we speaking to them? You know, what are we saying to them? So again, our language, any kind of jokes at work, we have to make sure that we're being appropriate in the workplace. And that's whether we're in person, by email, over the phone, on Zoom or WebEx or whatever you use for virtual communications, that sort of thing. We have to make sure that we're being professional and using appropriate language. Careful how we treat other people. If if our clients walk into our place of business and we greet them very kindly, we're very professional towards our clients, but then we turn around and we snap at our coworkers or we snap at our employees, what kind of portrait are we painting to them, right? Or, even if our employees see us yelling at other people in the workplace, what's that say about us? What's that going to make them feel? So again, how we treat people goes a long way in painting the picture of who we are. And finally, what's our work environment? You know, what kind of language do we use at work? What kind of settings are we in? I know, it varies among industries, right? And I've worked in many different industries myself, everything from warehousing to software to manufacturing to construction. So I know that each different industry has its own little culture. But again, we always have to make sure that we carry ourselves professionally and respectfully, no matter what the culture is. So that could mean that, we have that standard for ourselves where we're going to be professional, we're going to be respectful, even if nobody around us is being. Even if everybody around us is using maybe language that's inappropriate or something, we can only control to a certain extent what we do. So it's easy for us to carry, or it's going to be imperative for us to carry ourselves professionally, carry ourselves in a good manner, and not let other people drag us down into the gutter. Now, when it comes time to develop the work environment, of course, we have to make sure that we're making the most of what people bring to the table. And one of the examples I always like to talk about is communications in the multi-generational workforce. And this is something that, we've talked about in a couple different occasions, a couple different presentations, because it's something that most workplaces are facing, right? Our workforce is multi-generational. We have people that have been in the workplace, maybe they're close to retirement, whereas other people are just entering it. So you're going to have these interactions that are interesting to say the least. And nowhere is this more obvious than when we talk about communication between employees, right? What's the communication styles? What are we used to? So we have a couple different categories here. We broke them up. You got your maturists, baby boomers, Gen Xers, Gen Ys, Gen Zs. And there's, some preferences, how people prefer to communicate. We talk about maturists. We got traditional, right? Face-to-face conversation, formal letters, some email, that sort of thing. Move on to the baby boomers, of course. You got more telephone, face-to-face, but we also have telephone and email. For the sake of respect, we left fax out because a lot of us don't even remember using the last time we used a fax machine, right? Gen Xers, emails, text messages. That's, we were right at that time frame where that shift happened, where we went more to electronic communications, going all the way to Gen Y with more text, online, finally to Gen Zs where we have more handheld devices and FaceTimes. And as you can imagine, of course, these differences can create some issues at the workplace, right? So that's where it's important again to make sure that we're recognizing everybody's preferences, everybody's abilities, and knowing that different situations may require different means of communication. So, a text, it may not always be sufficient to cover everything that we would cover in a face-to-face meeting. Or we've all heard the saying, this meeting could have been an email. That's true in some cases, right? So again, we the thing to remember is we have a lot of different experience, a lot of different tools available to us right now. So it's just a matter of knowing when to apply those different tools to the situation that's going to make us the more effective. Okay. So we talk about what, different people bring to work. It's again, it's that situation where everybody is different. Everybody is an individual. We have to recognize that. As humans, we like to categorize things sometimes. It makes our life easier, right? We like to put things in certain categories, in certain boxes, certain drawers, so we know what everything is and what to expect. And sometimes we tend to do that with people, right? We think, well, people of a certain age maybe don't like using electronic devices, so we're just going to treat everybody in that age group the same way. Well, that's not always the case. Or people with maybe different ethnic backgrounds, right? We're going to make conclusions about them, or different religious beliefs, sexual orientations, that sort of thing. So again, it's important to know that yes, sometimes people fit into different categories, but those different categories do not always define the person as a whole. So I use the term, it's dangerous to kind of stereotype people and think that they are, you know, a certain thing because they fit in a certain category. So again, we know people fit in different categories. That's fine, but it's important to know your team individually, know what they bring to the table, and know how they can benefit the team as a whole. That's very important because, again, everybody wants to feel like there's a place for them at work, right? Like they belong at work. And how do we do that? Well, a couple different things, that people want to happen to feel like they belong. One, they want to be seen. So what's that mean? Well, they want to know they're not just a number. They're not just a cog in the wheel, right? They want to know that they're recognized at work. So they want to know that their contributions matter. No matter how small or how large, everybody wants to be recognized, be seen at work. We all see connections at work too. We interact with each other. We want to have some kind of social interaction with our peers, with our managers, with senior leaders. We want to make sure that there's some kind of connection there. Okay. And again, in another presentation, I made the question, or um, when we talk about strength finders, that's another training we do. One of the questions that are asked is, do you have a best friend at work? And best friend doesn't mean that it's somebody that, you donate a kidney to if needed or something. Best friend at work means you have somebody that you can connect to, that you can talk to, that you can share things with. And that could just be as something as simple as, you sit with them at lunchtime and you talk about the weekend or you talk about the game or whatever it is, but you have some kind of connection there, some kind of positive connection where it makes you feel welcome. It brings you some kind of comfort at work. It's a welcome, friendly face. People want to be supported at work as well. They want to know that there is we're going to provide them with training, with knowledge, with help at work to get the job done. Again, not everybody's going to hit the ground running all the time. Not everybody has the same ability. So we want to make sure that people have resources there, that we're a resource for them. If we're a manager, if we're a leader of the team, it's an important part of our job is not just, putting people in the right place or, filling in all the gaps. An important part of our job is making sure that we're eliminating barriers to success for our team, right? As leaders, that's what we do. We help to eliminate barriers. We help support our team. We help give them what they need to be successful. And finally, in order for people to feel like they belong, they want to be proud of where they work. And if they feel seen, if they feel they have connections there, they feel supported, people are going to be proud of their workplace. People are going to be proud of the work they do and proud of their organization. And it's very important. If you have people that feel that pride in their workplace, they're going to have that sense of commitment. They're going to have that, sense of belonging there. They're going to want to be there. They're going to want to make it better all the time. And this is what we want from our team. This is what we want from our coworkers. We want people that want to be there, that want to make it better, that want to address issues and address problems as they come up and improve the team, improve others, and improve themselves to keep growing. So I talked a little bit about belonging before, and some of the, one of the barriers that we have, or one of the things that can affect it, is what we call unconscious bias. And unconscious bias is basically automatic responses that we have when we see something maybe that we don't recognize or something different from us, right? It's the quick judgments that we make, and We make these about other people sometimes. Maybe we see people dressed a certain way, or people of a certain race, or people with certain facial hair perhaps. We make some kind of judgment about them based on our experience, based on our perceptions, based on what we've heard. Um, are those conclusions right? Sometimes, but sometimes they're not. And what that unconscious bias does is, maybe it blocks us from getting to know that person. We jump to that conclusion that says, hey, that's that person so and so, and they look like this, so they must be that. And in the past, I haven't really gotten along with that type of people, so I'm just not going to engage with them. I'm not going to disrespect them. I'm just not going to engage because it's been my experience, and in the past, I haven't got along with people like that. Well, we could see how that could be dangerous, right? That could start fracturing the group, but at the same time, that could also lead to isolating that person. Maybe that we've had some bad experiences with people of a certain race or gender or ethnicity or whatever, but it's important to recognize not everybody's the same. And not being welcoming or not being open to that person can lead to, obviously, what we see a lot of issues in the workplace. So these things can be expressed in a couple different ways, of course. If we have somebody that maybe we have that unconscious bias towards, we're going to show some microaggressions or micro inequities towards them. So maybe we're not going to talk to them. We're not going to take any questions from them or any suggestions with them. Or when they come to talk to us, hey, we're not going to give them our full attention because we don't want to engage with them or we don't really value their opinion. We have some other micro inequities. They're mispronouncing a person's name, and I want to clarify that's not making a mistake or having somebody having a hard to pronounce name. I mean, I'm there. My first name is Eliseo, so that's something that not everybody can pronounce, but I appreciate when people try, right? But when somebody does it mockingly, somebody makes a joke of it, that's a different story, and that's what we're talking about. Or if somebody's, talking and you continually interrupt them, what's that say to them? That says that we don't value them, we don't respect them, and we don't think they have anything important to say, right? That's not showing them any respect, and that's an issue there. So again, when someone is telling us something, let's give them our attention, give them a chance to speak before we respond to it. And that's important. We are responding to what they tell us. We're not just waiting for them to finish so we can say our part. We're responding to what they say and having a interactive, important conversation that way. So what we want to do is what we call micro affirmations, right? Ask everybody for their opinion. Get others' opinions. Recognize achievements. Everybody does something for the success of the organization or for the success as a whole. When somebody talks to us or somebody approaches us, using friendly facial expressions or gestures. Like, I know we're not always in the mood to talk to people. We're not always in the mood to address everything, but having that friendly facial expression, showing interest in what other people have to say is going to go a long way in creating that respectful work environment. And of course, we're not always going to get it right. Sometimes we make a mistake, sometimes say the wrong thing, sometimes someone approaches us and we're just not in the mood that day. So if we make that mistake, we have to fix it, right? If we recognize that we made a mistake, we're going to apologize. But just as important, we're going to find a way to fix it, to address it, to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because what happens if we make a mistake and we apologize? Then we come back after lunch and we make the same mistake and we apologize again, and so on and so forth. After a while, that apology is just words. So again, if we recognize we made a mistake, let's do what we can to fix it and prevent it from happening again. So some tips in making work more human for you. Show gratitude. You know, thank people, right? Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking on the project. Thank you for submitting whatever it was. Thank you for helping your team, right? Talking, communicating. Talk to people, have meaningful conversations with each other. That doesn't mean learn everybody's deepest, darkest secrets or anything like that, but just talk to each other. Even if it's related to work, have open conversations with people and finally celebrate our success. Okay? I mean, we all at the organization for a common goal, right? To make the organization successful and to share that success with each other. And success doesn't have to be, one huge, goal that's many, many years away. there's many, you know, landmarks along the way. So let's celebrate those. Celebrate the small successes. Keeps the team motivated, keeps the team engaged, and it's a good way to show appreciation for what everybody's doing. So again, thanking. It's one thing when we get recognition from management, but hopefully that fosters an environment where your peers are recognizing each other's achievements and thanking each other. Again, recognizing everybody's contributions and try to give praise on a regular basis. It's sometimes we just talk to other people or call other people to talk to them when they did something wrong. Well, let's try to flip that around a little bit. Let's try to, make sure that we're also recognizing and pointing out when people are doing something right, when people are succeeding at something. Again, when it comes to talking, it's about building relationships, building that trust among your team. You know, we want to make sure the team knows they can depend on each other, right? And this could be things like having team meetings, but also having one-on-one meetings. If you're a leader, check in with your team. Don't wait for the weekly meeting. If you have a chance, you see somebody out on the floor, hey, how's it going? How's the project going today? How are we moving along? Just little check-ins like that can alert you of not just the progress of the organization as a whole, but how that person is doing. If you talk to a person, they're showing frustration, you talk to them a little bit, and then you talk to them the next day and they're still showing that same sense of frustration or disengagement, that's your sign to jump in there and get involved because you may have an issue going on. Celebration, again, helps build community. We're celebrating our success along the way. We're bringing attention to the fact that we're all working towards a common goal and that, we recognize that it takes work to get there. So we're going to celebrate those steps along the way. We're going to celebrate that we're heading in the right direction because that's important. We want to make sure people keep motivated, keep that motivation to keep doing things right and keep going the right way. So some final thoughts for you for creating that respectful communication at work. Let's be sensitive to the reactions of others, right? What we say, how does it land? How are they reacting to it? And maybe that means, we have to have a follow-up meeting or a follow-up conversation or take things offline to kind of discuss it, and that's fine. But, it's important to clarify those situations from the get-go rather than let those bad feelings linger. Don't participate in speech or behavior that's unwelcome, makes others uncomfortable, or is derogatory or insulting. That's a simple one, right? We are the ones that basically create the culture in our workplace. So what kind of culture do you want to create? If you make a mistake, own up to it and apologize. Speak with your colleagues and not about them. I know there's gossip at work. Wherever you have people are going to have opinions, you have conversations. But again, it's important not to weaponize those conversations or that gossip against your colleagues. Avoid snap judgments and make an effort to include people who are different from us and respect your co-workers and your peers. So, final thing to consider for you today is, we've talked about a lot of different topics. Um, think about one or two maybe that you're going to incorporate into your workplace, right? I mean, there's a lot of suggestions in this presentation, and no one's saying you have to incorporate them all at once because honestly, that may be difficult or that may be setting you up for failure. So just pick one or two things that maybe you think could benefit your group or could benefit you personally in your professional development and incorporate those. And you keep building on from there because all these things they're kind of interwoven with each other. So you could start with one and that'll lead to another. So with that, that kind of wraps up our presentation for today. Thank you for sharing it's early, so I'll call it your brunch time with us. I would like to remind you, we do have another webinar coming up here, September 17th, of what employers need today. So make sure you tune in for that as well. If you've been through all five of the other ones, make sure you get your card stamped for a free drink. No, I'm kidding. But just, thank you for participating. I really do appreciate that. If you have any questions, either about the topics we talked about today or anything else HR related, just want to remind you we do have that HR hotline in conjunction with Monterey County Works. So make sure you give us a call. Again, if it's a question or if it's just a situation that you just want to talk through, you just want to friendly, just want to bend our ears about it to see if you're seeing it the right way, if there's any other point of view, give us a call. We live for that sort of stuff. Monterey County Works. Again, Laura talked about all the job fairs and all the programs they have going on. So if you have any questions about that, or if you want to get more information, hit up their website or give her an email or a call. I know she'd love to hear from you, and they want to make sure that you're getting the most out of those programs there. For those of you that were with us for continuing education, I have some codes for you for HRCI. It is 710945, and for SHRM, that's 25-HGY7G. That's 25-HGY7G. I don't have the call signs for that today. My mind's not working that way. I will say, though, do not forget that dash in there for SHRM, or they will be very upset. I know Anna mentioned a survey for you, so let us know what you thought about the presentation, or let us know if there's any topics that you'd like to hear about in the future. We do take a look at these. We share that information with Monterey County Works, so they know what what you guys are thinking, what you thought about the presentations, and what we can change in the future. So take a couple minutes, just a few questions. I promise it won't take your whole time, and we will not spam you after that. At least I don't think we will, Anna, will we? So.
Not the unwelcome email kind, just the blue can kind.
There you go. There you go. So with that, that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for sticking around. Thank you for your attention. Anything else to add there?
I think that's it. Just a reminder, if you do have this afternoon available and can use the opportunity as a resource, they do have that job fair happening this afternoon at 1 p.m. The link to, see if I can pull it up really quickly. Sorry, friends. This is one more time the link to their full event calendar that I'm dropping into the chat. So things from July all the way through September are activated on there right now. Quite a full calendar. So make sure that you take advantage of the resources available as a Monterey County employer sponsored by Monterey County Works. So yeah, thank you, Eli, for sharing your time and expertise. I love this training. As you said, you can apply it towards not just professionally, but personally as well. So always find a new nugget to take with me. So hopefully everyone did as well. And we look forward to seeing you all on September 17 for What Employers Need Today. Thank you, Laura, and your whole team. And thank you all for joining us live. And we'll see you in September. Cheers, everyone.